What's up, everybody? If you want to join the greatest online Star Wars community, the Fandom Menace, make sure you hit that subscribe button before today's video starts, so you don't miss out on any updates and you're always the first to know when our newest videos go live. There have been a bunch of Reddit leaks concerning the rise of Skywalker's alleged tumultuous production. And yes, we covered some on the High Council and will continue to cover them through singular videos. But there's a point I wanted to cover as soon as possible. China. Yes, China. Officially, the People's Republic of China. A country in East Asia and the world's most populous country with a population of around 1.428 billion. Covering approximately 9.6 million square kilometers, it is the fourth largest country, and it is also the reason why the Rise of Skywalker's climax made absolutely no sense. In the film, when Rey is fighting Palpatine, you know, the same villain that was defeated by Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi, she summons the strength to defeat him, Palpatine, pronouns pal, from the Force ghosts surrounding her. Awesome. Just like Luke in Return of the Jedi, except not like that at all. When Luke sees the Force ghosts after his victory, we, the audience, see them with him. We see their approving smiles. We feel Luke's accomplishment. What about Rey? Rey Skywalker, the greatest Jedi of all time? Well, the Force ghosts just phone it in. Literally. In The Rise of Skywalker, we don't see the Force ghosts calling Rey to help her. We only hear them. Was this because the film ran late in the production and the crew couldn't finish the effect? Nope. It was China. Let me jump to those Reddit leaks and elaborate on why Disney's greatest mistake was catering to an audience that doesn't like Star Wars. Sound familiar? Where do you think Lucasfilm learned it from? For months, we've been hearing about the ending that will blow your mind. That wasn't the case. If we look at the newest Reddit leak regarding The Rise of Skywalker, we see that the ending that will blow your mind was part of this, an earlier cut of the film. Older actors were included like Hayden Christensen, Ewan McGregor, and Samuel L. Jackson, and anyone who wasn't animated. The Force Ghosts weren't meant to be voices because they shot that footage on camera. The actors were in costume. Rey was supposed to be surrounded by the Force Ghosts to serve as a sort of barrier between her and the Sith surrounding them. My sources think, but can't 100% confirm, that this is because of China. It's an office talk of sorts. Some VXF people claim they got a list of approved shades of blue that they could use on Luke's Force Ghosts. Cutting this out was when the bad blood turned into a nightmare for JJ because the movie he was making was suddenly unrecognizable to him in almost every way. JJ's cut aside, this office talk sort of makes sense. We know that big film studios have spent years trying to break into the Chinese market. Sometimes it works. And sometimes it doesn't. When it works big time. But at what costs? Transformers died, right? I had no clue that there were 5 Michael Bay Transformers films. I was under the assumption that the last one was Part 4 from 2014, and then Bumblebee last year. But that wasn't the case. Apparently there was another film in 2017, and my brain melded them together. Which was the Mark Wahlberg one? That's really irrelevant to all of this. My point is that Transformers is a wet dream for an American studio. Or was. Let's go back a few years when China was in love with Transformers. This comes from Variety. The Transformers films may be seen by their studios and filmmakers as disposable, mere summer amusements, but my colleague Justin Chang has attempted to parse the politics of Age of Extinction and observed that Bay's films are hardly apolitical. Even if his worldview seems about as sophisticated as a 30-second burger spot, everything happens in a context. The context for Age of Extinction is that sometime soon, China will pass the United States to become the world's largest movie market, making the pursuit of the Chinese market a strategic imperative for Hollywood majors. Moreover, the U.S. economy still has not fully recovered from the Great Recession, so the billions accrued by China's elite and corporations are a tempting source of financing, so there's a considerable incentive to court goodwill from Chinese authorities. Not coincidentally, Age of Extinction is considered an officially assisted production, made with the help of Giaflix Enterprise and the official state broadcaster CCTV's China Movie Channel, who ponied up part of the budget to get a piece of the box office. No such deal gets struck in China without the consent and approval of the Beijing government and the Chinese Communist Party. And in this case, Paramount is in business with the Beijing regime directly through CCTV. The Chinese Communist Party and the Beijing government may have embraced capitalism, but they are unabashedly authoritarian. They want their values advanced on screen, and Age of Extinction obliges, showing global audiences Chinese people turning to the central government in a crisis and the authorities responding with firm benevolence. But it's for money, right? So that's okay. Well, it didn't work for long. China's ugly divorce with Transformers. It's not me, it's you. If you've ever been the object of a sudden, unexpected romantic breakup or the victim of a nasty divorce, you may have an inkling of how Paramount and Michael Bay are feeling right now about China's rapid turn of affection against them. For years, their Transformers franchise was the undisputed champion at the Chinese box office, destroying all-time records like giant robots wreaking havoc in a major metropolis. The PRC's outpouring of love for the first 4 films was overwhelming, both in online discussion forums and, more importantly, at the multiplexes, where each successive picture gobbled up ever-increasing riches from the moviegoers' wallets. China's love became the sort of drug that Hollywood studio executives crave most. A powerful, heartfelt devotion accompanied by seemingly endless floods of gifts like huge product placement contracts, merchandising bonanzas, and nearly $400 million box office guarantees for Transformers: The Last Knight. It ensured Paramount would clean up in China on the latest picture, regardless of actual attendance results at the Middle Kingdom's multiplexes. I heard one investor reportedly paid Paramount about 100 million RMB, about $16 million, for a tiny 1% share of the film's profits. But suddenly, as of this past weekend, it became sadly apparent that China has dumped Michael Bay and Transformers like a smelly diaper on a hot day. The Last Knight may have had a promising weekend at $125 million, but that was like the breakup sex that preceded the changing of locks, dumping of possessions on the lawn, and threatening letters from a divorce attorney. The grosses are fading fast and far from the $400 million gross that could have been reasonably expected just a week ago, and the film will ultimately turn over barely half of that amount. So you're probably asking yourself, why am I sharing this with you? Well, it's simple. Disney did with Star Wars what Paramount did with Transformers. Tanked the logical storytelling to appease a country that doesn't like Star Wars. Do you realize how much it hurts me to say there was logic somewhere in this nostalgia-fueled nightmare? It stings the nostril breathing in the BS, but it does make sense. As I stated earlier, there are over 1.4 billion people in China, and companies like Disney and Paramount see each and every one of them as a dollar sign. Changing the story to appease the new dollar sign reeks of corporate greed, but it also mirrors Disney's other approach to Star Wars. The desire of Kathleen Kennedy to expand Star Wars to girls, women, and Reylos who didn't like it initially was a dumb move. The merchandise changed to appeal to a demographic that didn't work. There were books spotlighting the women of Star Wars, but those didn't work. And the media is doing its damnedest to make the conversation around Star Wars about the strong women as a way to insulate the films from criticism for fear of being called a sexist. Long story short, it didn't work. Same goes for China. After the third week in theaters, The Rise of Skywalker brought in $18 million, an additional $3 million since we last talked. Failure in China is nothing new for Star Wars. Solo made $16 million, The Last Jedi made $41 million, and Rogue One made $69 million. That is great. Each film made more than the previous one. Well, hold on a minute there, Tex. What I just read to you was the inverse. Each film actually went down. Significantly. Now, The Force Awakens is conspicuously absent from my assessment. Why? Well, there's a good reason for that. The Force Awakens cleared $120 million at the box office, and a lot of industry analysts cite that to excuse Disney's choices when pandering to China. I only wish they'd look at the massive drop from each picture instead of clinging to the high watermark that was The Force Awakens. In all fairness, you have to ask yourself, how did Star Wars The Force Awakens make so much money in China, while the rest of the films didn't? Well, I believe I found the answer. The Atlantic had a piece from 2012 that covered why the Chinese love American brands. Americans can carry often a somewhat simplistic view of China and the Chinese people. Although apprehensive about the rise of the economic juggernaut and its impact on the American way of life, the images China casts are rooted in the past, dusty, robotic, gray, unconformist. The Chinese, on the other hand, are fascinated by America, although often perplexed by its inherent contradictions. The United States is both free and unfair, creative and fashion-challenged, sporty and grossly overweight, institutionally robust and politically dysfunctional, individualistic and self-deluded. They are amazed at that a nation of 300 million self-starters does not come apart at the seams. On a personal level, the Chinese admire, or even intoxicated by the U.S. style of individualism. Evidence of deep affection for the American way of life is everywhere. Illegal DVDs of U.S. movies and television shows sell like hotcakes, especially big ones such as Friends, Sex and the City, Desperate Housewives, and The Big Bang Theory, which celebrate a quintessentially American fusion of community and individual idiosyncrasy. When it comes to American pop culture brands, there is none bigger than Star Wars. I've often called it the Rolls-Royce of pop culture, but as of late, Disney has been treating it as if it were a Daewoo Lanos. Add that to the fact that the Chinese market doesn't care, and the only people left hurting were the Star Wars fans, though I'm not sure how many of those were left after The Last Jedi. The idea of removing Force Ghosts, getting approval of appropriate color choices, as per the rumors, just to appease the Chinese market is frustrating. But why does the Chinese government hate ghosts so much? Well, I found another article that sheds some light into this weird idiosyncrasy. Is China really scared of ghost films? It was reported that the film Crimson Peak didn't get released in China because it had ghosts in it, which goes against the Communist Party's secular principles. But is that the whole story? Ghosts play a prominent role in Chinese culture, folklore, mythology, and legend, and have done for thousands of years. Every year we have a ghost festival to welcome the family dead, and China's most famous classic literature is showered with ghostly themes. But like many things in China, ghosts are not as simple as they seem. Throughout Chinese literature and history, ghosts have been a metaphor, and evil ghosts often symbolize corrupt government officials. Ghost stories become a political tool anyone can use, and that the government found hard to control. Not surprisingly, in China today, under the one-party political rule, very little has changed. Banning ghost stories sounds almost as absurd and laughable to the West, and yet it carries the deep-rooted historical fear that the government feels about its own people. So the Force Ghosts make the government feel threatened? Okay. It's crazy to think that this is the case and easy to dismiss, but I think there may be a little more evidence on this in the actual films. Luke Skywalker hands Rey Leia's lightsaber through the Force in The Rise of Skywalker. Star Wars fans responded with,
"That's not how the Force works."
The communication and movement of objects through the Force, like Darth Vader's helmet or water from The Last Jedi, bothered Star Wars fans because they knew,
"That's not how the Force works."
And now it's starting to make sense. Disney willingly changed how the Force worked at its core to appease China, a country that doesn't really like Star Wars. The mysticism of Star Wars is gone. When Lucas ran it, the Force was referred to as a religion. Obi-Wan Kenobi described it as,
"The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together."
And Disney ruined it. Everything Disney has done has been at the expense of Star Wars fans to rake in new ones. But guess what? It didn't work. Changing something at its core to bring in new fans never works. The films continue to struggle and the fans are abandoning the franchise. Here are the numbers. It didn't work. That's not how Star Wars works. So folks, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. There was a lot of information in those Reddit leaks, and that gives us a lot of content to cover in the coming days, so be on the lookout for those videos, and make sure you're subscribed to this channel by hitting the bell notification turned on to all so you don't miss a single thing. We're off to a great start in 2020. We had 2 really successful streams, a great video, and if you haven't heard those yet, go back and check them out. And I'll be back in a few days, so you guys have more stuff to listen to here on the channel. As always, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, and I want to leave you guys with a question. What do you think of all this? I mean, do you think that's why the Force has become so bastardized? It makes sense if you really think about it in the context that the mysticism, the religion, the ancient spiritualism has gone from the Force, replaced with some sort of, I don't know, time portal, time vortex. It's like Luke Skywalker at the end of The Last Jedi. He can magically teleport himself, have a lightsaber that works, all that stuff. Force visions were just Force visions. This is something else. This isn't like the cave in The Empire Strikes Back, what's down there, only what you take with you type of thing. No, this is the actual Force, and it has become something that it is not. And people wonder why, and I think this is the best answer why. Will we ever get official confirmation from Disney? Hell no. Disney can't even tell you why any of the complaints we have are valid. They can't tell you if we're a small vocal minority or the reason why the films changed because they don't want to anger Star Wars fans and they want to make more money in the future. Either way, they know we exist, they listen to us. So ask the question why Disney ruined the Force. It'll be fun to hear him respond one day. So that's it for me for today, folks. Thank you for watching, and as always, be excellent to each other.